Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to his bonus episode 439 of the All Dolphins podcast. I'm joined by Dave Hyde from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, sunsentinel.com. Weren't going to do anything before the game against the Cleveland Browns, but events have warranted us popping on here and then doing some talking because there's some significant developments involving mostly quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. First off, I'm very rude. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Morning, Alan. Good. I'm good. My hip's fine, I think. I'm
Oh,
getting old, but I think it's okay.
that makes one of you if we're talking you and Tua. And that's the big news that came out on Saturday with Tua downgraded from questionable to doubtful for the game against the Browns because of the hip injury, which he initially sustained against the Houston Texans in week 15, played through it in week 16 against the San Francisco 49ers. Then this week asked about it, kind of basically downplayed it, basically saying, that time of year everybody plays through things, no big deal, basically. And then on Friday, whereas before the game against the 49ers, after being limited on Thursday against the 49ers, he was limited he was a full participant on Friday, removed from the injury report. Well, this week he was limited Thursday, limited Friday as well, listed as questionable, which immediately is like, well, that's different than the previous week. And then came the very surprising news on Saturday that he was downgraded to doubtful. Dolphins still have something to play for in terms of the playoffs because of the Denver Broncos loss against the Cincinnati Bengals. And now it's looking like the Dolphins are going to play a must win game with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. Less than ideal.
Well, full circle on the season, right? I mean, the season once again falls to the backup quarterback, and no, it's completely different this time in that Huntley has had weeks and weeks not only to have his own injury, come back from injury, but he's been in the system now for weeks and weeks, as opposed he was just thrust into it last time. So, but yeah, ultimately it comes down to the backup quarterback again, probably, assuming Tua doesn't play.
Correct. And this is where I'm going to be as respectful as possible, but Tyler Huntley is limited as a quarterback. And if you're a Dolphin team that's been spending money all over the place, signing out contract extensions all over the place, restructures, even to guys who had more than 1 year left on their contract, why is it that the season comes down to having to win with Tyler Huntley as your backup quarterback? I again, this goes back to the offseason and the big whiff the Dolphins had as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, there were a lot of choices they can make, but again, you know, Mike McDaniel falls in love with players. That's
He does.
good thing about him and the bad thing about it. I mean, it works both ways. And then did he fall too much in love with Skylar Thompson? Were they protecting Tua from bringing in a veteran? I mean, there's a lot of theories going around, but the bottom line is if I'm the veteran GM, I protect my coach, my first time coach, from going into a season with. I mean, we were out there in August. I wrote a column again saying they got to get somebody. I said, get Ryan Tannehill. He's sitting in town. They need to get. You just watch those backup quarterbacks, and you're like, this isn't really a plan to go into the season with. And then they get Huntley. Huntley, you know, you see why Baltimore wanted Huntley. He's as nobody's like Lamar Jackson, but you can run some of the similar stuff that Lamar Jackson does because Huntley's mobile, makes plays with his feet in a way, and he's won for Baltimore. So the good thing about the Dolphins right now is Mike McDaniel's had a lot of time to work with, or at least watch Huntley, get some idea of, okay, here's the plays he likes to run. And Huntley, at the same time, has had some time with the Dolphin offense for the same thing.
Yeah, and the only problem is he's limited as a passer, and that's just a fact. That's been his career. That's nothing new, and a lot of the quick hitting stuff again. But the Dolphins' offense basically became this year dink and dunk,
Yeah.
um, and he can do that. One would think he could do that operationally at the very least, functionally, except that wasn't the case in games 3 through 6 when the Dolphins won 1 and 3, which has helped put them in this predicament. It's not the only reason because again, Dolphins are 6-5 when Tua is starting at quarterback, so it's not like they were tearing it up. Now, the big picture here, and there was a tweet from Tracy Wolfson, the CBS sideline reporter, who said that Tua indicated the injury is to the same hip he injured at Alabama, which was that really bad injury in his final year there. Apparently not in the same spot, but to me, I hear injury to the same hip that has him downgraded from questionable to doubtful, and I'm thinking big picture, that is not good.
Yeah, and the question becomes what, is it a how bad is the injury? And we don't know. I mean, it could just be a tweak. It could be as you know, when you get hurt in one place, are you compensating? Was something compensating in his hip for that? I mean, there's a lot of questions there. But yeah, ultimately, you don't like to see any injuries to your starting quarterback, but especially some form of repeating injury. So there's that too, on top of the season's questions. I think that's something that we will get. I'm a long way from now as far as how serious a hip injury is.
Correct, but again, the knee-jerk reaction is like, oh boy, the hip, and it's bad enough that he might not play in a game the Dolphins need to have to win. Again, for those not familiar with the scenarios, the Dolphins remain alive. They need to win their final two games. There you go. They need to win their final two games against the Browns and the Jets. They need the Colts to lose one of their final two games, which wouldn't be necessarily as big of a deal, except that they're playing at the Giants and at home against Jacksonville. And they need the Denver Broncos to lose at home against Kansas City next week, with Kansas City already having clinched the number one seed in the AFC playoffs. And based on recent history, and I did a story on this earlier this week on MiamiDolphinsOnTheSide.com, of the 6 previous time a team had clinched the number one seed before the regular season finale, only once did a team use its starting quarterback in that last game. That was Aaron Rodgers with the Packers. Interestingly enough, and this gives me hope that we'll be spared the Chiefs winning another Super Bowl, because I'm tired of it, even though I have respect for the Chiefs. None of the teams who clinched the number one seed before the last week went on to win the Super Bowl.
Let me ask you this, since you've done the research, because I thought Andy Reid played starters a half. He didn't. He kept them out. Okay.
Right. In 2020, they had it. Tyreek didn't play. Patrick Mahomes didn't play. Travis Kelce didn't play.
Okay.
I don't know if I had in my notes whether Chris Jones played. So, and in that season, they wound up losing. They made it to the Super Bowl, but they lost in the Super Bowl to the Buccaneers. Will that change Andy Reid's mindset? I don't know. Last year, for example, the 2 number one seeds clinched a week before. It was Baltimore and San Francisco. Lamar Jackson didn't play. Brock Purdy didn't play.
Right.
Frisco went to the Super Bowl. The Ravens lost in the AFC Championship game. So
I think what matters here is Andy Reid's track record, because I especially with things on the line for other teams, he's going to say, and he's decided, here's how I coach. And if I take Patrick Mahomes out in previous years, especially Mahomes had, ankle injuries and things right now, he's probably going to take him out this year, would be the idea. And who's sitting there? Chad? Who's Chad Henne?
Carson
In there?
Wentz.
Or he's the ghost of Chad Henne.
Carson
No Matt Moore either. No Matt Moore. No ex-Dolphin quarterback for the Chiefs.
Hey, maybe they signed Ryan Tannehill for that one game. No, and the thing is, it's not like Randy Reid's going to look back to 2020 and see where, well, resting my guys caused rust, and that's what got us beating the Super Bowl. No, if you remember, the Super Bowl is their offensive line was really, really bad and banged up, and the Buccaneers were all over Patrick Mahomes that entire game. And they still made it to the Super Bowl, so I have a hard time believing that Andy Reid's going to say, no, I need to play Patrick Mahomes, particularly 2 weeks after that ankle sprain, which supposedly was really, really serious, and lo and behold, he's back the next
year. If you're a Dolphin fan, what is the bigger, longer odd of the Chiefs losing without Patrick Mahomes playing, or the Colts losing to both the Giants and Jacksonville, who have
one of the two? They only need to lose one of the two.
Oh, right. To either, excuse me, I misstated that. Either the Giants or Jacksonville, when both teams have every reason at this point to just say lose and try to get, there's a mix there for the number one pick. So
Correct. The Giants right now own the number one
They
pick.
have it, right.
They win against the Colts today, and it's like you're hurting yourself, which would be another like what's the word argument for having a lottery at the top of the NFL draft instead of putting teams in a position to lose by winning, which is ridiculous, but that's a different topic. So now the Dolphins are faced with that situation. Does this latest injury with Tua affect? Again, I know we'll revisit this topic first of all, when we know more information, number one, and number two, because we'll have plenty of other time. But as it stands right now, because on social media, as you might expect, people were going nuts, and those who like, especially those who don't like Tua, were like, see, they messed up and all that. Dump this guy. Well, you're not dumping him because his contract is kind of makes him undumpable. And again, he's not a good quarterback. He's a good quarterback. The issue with Tua, again, is always the injury issue that's always hovering. And then number two, always, and this is again in 2024, the same thing. What's the ceiling?
Yeah.
It's great to pound on the bad teams. Where are the performances against the good teams? And I'm going to do a preemptive strike here. Yes, it's a team game. Okay. But since a lot of folks hone in on Tua and his numbers when they're really, really good, you can't just, and then it can't be, well, Tua really kicked ass against bad teams, but the whole team sucked against, playoff opponents. I mean, it's one or the other.
Here's moving forward. Here's my issue with Tua in the contract. If I'm Chris Greer or Steve Ross or Mike McDaniel, I say, here's the roster we can have with Tua earning $50 million a year. And here's a roster we can have at 40. Here's a roster at 35. I mean, if you want to give him a contract, you look at the Chiefs with Mahomes. He's not even getting maximum dollars. Or Buffalo, the decisions they've had to make with Josh Allen. The teams with the big contracts for quarterbacks, the Chargers, the teams that rightly or wrongly have given big contracts to quarterbacks have had to make sacrifices across the roster. And we talk about the ceiling with Tua. He's a good quarterback. I don't know. Nobody's arguing that. The question, as you say, is I don't want to get lambasted for this, but with Ryan Tannehill, with Ryan Tannehill, my line was he's good enough if everybody around him is good enough. And you saw that in Tennessee. When he was in the right offense, he took a team to the AFC. He accompanied a team to the AFC Championship game. Tua has skills. We know that. We've seen that. Nobody's arguing that. The question is, I think he needs everybody around him good enough. You saw when he was missing. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks would be in trouble when they're missing their tackles at Houston. Okay. Yes. Patrick Mahomes somehow makes that work because he's Patrick Mahomes. Okay. I think everybody can have an adult discussion. He's not in that top 5 quarterbacks that can work that way. He needs help across the board. Okay. And when you give a guy $50 million, the question becomes, okay, what's the roster going to look like around him? And can we win with that roster?
Yeah. And the point I want to make here, it's all because you have fans who are like, well, what about the Jets? He didn't have Tyreek Hill, and then they won 30-0. It's one game, seriously. And if you want to dissect that game, look at what the Dolphins did on offense. There was a long pass of Jalen Waddle. Everything else was dink and dunk against a team without an NFL offense. Okay, and so, but it's doing it more than once. It's the same old argument with like, well, Tua can't throw a deep pass. Then he has like one bomb. It's like, see, you said Tua can't. Again, it's about being able to do it over and over again. And the thing, I'm like with Dave, Tua's a good quarterback, but there's a ceiling there, and that's what I said all along. Here's an interesting one here, because I know right now it's too easy. It's very easy to say, well, obviously Dolphins shouldn't have given them the long contract extension, should have been in play on the 5th-year option. That came with its own set of issues because Tua's a very popular player in the locker room and all that. And then he was doing the sit-in in training camp. How would that have looked or worked out had the Dolphins stood their ground and said, Tua, you're going to play on the 5th-year option?
Well, I mean, teams have done that. Baltimore did that with Lamar Jackson. How did that work? It worked out fine for them. I mean, it depends on the culture of the team and how you want to run how Steve Ross wants to run his team. Somebody inside was saying, no, we're not going to give Tua the big contract. Right up to the point where Tua thanked Mike McDaniel for pounding the table and helping him get the contract. So again, my question on all these contracts, let's lump them all together. The Ramsey making him the highest paid cornerback at basically at age 30 when you didn't need to, extending Tyreek. It's a culture of comfort of the Dolphins. They're trying to they want to make everybody comfortable. And my larger question is who's looking out for the organization and stuff like that. And now you're living with, you have high paid contracts, guys who have played at 8, 9, 10 years in the league, a lot of wear and tear on their body in their early 30s. And look, if you're a championship team, that's one thing. If your team's struggling to make the playoffs, now you got a whole different set of questions.
Yeah, and to me, it was way too much kumbaya and rewards for a team that still hasn't won a playoff game since 2000. And so it's like, had the Dolphins won something or gotten to the AFC Championship game last year, all the new contracts they gave out, go for it, no problem. But you're giving out all these new contracts again. The most baffling part to me wasn't even so much to a Waddle, like Jalen Ramsey, like 2 years left on his contract. Tyreek was signed through 2025 or whatever. Mike McDaniel had 2 years left on his contract. What was the rush again before you accomplished anything? Here's an interesting hypothetical for you, Dave Hyde. Had the Dolphins insisted on Tua playing on the 5th-year option, and he would have done so, what would his contract situation look like heading into next offseason?
Well, let's start here with that. What's the market for Tua? Who's going to sign him? I mean, it'd have to be a dome team, or a warm weather team.
Correct.
And how many teams are looking for quarterbacks like that? And so you're narrowed down to New Orleans, maybe.
Vegas, maybe.
Like that. And then you get into what's the market? How many teams want to take on a guy with his injury history? And, where's the ceiling, as you put it properly? And my point is the Dolphins were bidding against themselves in that contract negotiation for $50 million. And people would say, well, that's the market. Well, why is that the market? Because Jacksonville, you want to follow Jackson? Is that the lead you want to follow, Jacksonville? I mean, follow the well-run organization. To me, the smart organizations, and they got a little lucky. The Baker Mayfield at Tampa Bay with $33 million. Obviously, Sam Darnold at $10 million, but that's going to be reset to something. But I'm curious what some teams do with these contracts coming up right now with their young quarterbacks. Who has a young quarterback coming up on a contract? Is $50 million really the market price?
Oh, Brock Purdy is the one that's coming up.
Brock Purdy, perfect comparison. What is saying? Well-run organization, good quarterback. Again, a good quarterback, but he's got limitations, right? From the standpoint, can you carry a team? Can you carry a team deep into the deepest part of the season? People would say with Joe Burrow, look, he's got serious injuries just like Tua. He does. But you see when he's his healthy seasons, not this one, okay? But
yes, this one, Dave, absolutely this one. He's been
okay. He's carried this team to wherever it's gone, okay? But he's taking a team to a Super Bowl, 2 AFC Championship games, and this to me, to your point, it's not his fault where they are.
I mean, my Lord, has that guy been good? You looked at the game yesterday also. And then also, if you look at his career numbers, check out and passer rating is not the end all be all, but his passer rating is clearly his best month is December, which is, and the other problem with the Dolphins when it comes to quarterbacks is they're playing in the AFC. And if you look, it's maybe not a coincidence that for the past 2 years, your top 3 seeds have been KC, Buffalo, and Baltimore, who employ Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. That's another problem. And and beyond the numbers, it's like if Tua was on his 5th-year option heading into next off season, would the Dolphins be giving him a long-term contract? Would they franchise tag him? Would they look to restart at quarterback?
I think they'd sign him, but it would be for a, yeah, maybe they wouldn't because maybe they just say we love Tua and give him $50 million again. But to me, if I'm playing GM or Steve Ross, I'm saying, can we win big if we're paying him $50 million a year? That's ultimately the question they had to answer inside.
If the Dolphins win their last 2 games, finish 9-8, but don't make the playoffs, how do you view the whole season? Is it a failure because they didn't make the playoffs? Do you just shrug and go, well, hopefully they learn the lesson of to plan better as far as the backup quarterback position? Where does that leave you?
Oh, it's a failure. I mean, look, they came into this season to 7th seed wasn't the goal. Supplanting Buffalo atop the AFC was the goal. Let's not move the goalposts here because they had a quarterback get injured and they weren't ready with that plan. And as you pointed out earlier, it's not like their record is great even with Tua starting games. So Steve Ross to me has already played his hand. He's shown giving Mike McDaniel the game ball last week and saying that okay, we're going to run it back again. And look, that's his decision. But there's got to be a significant change to me in this culture of comfort. And I don't know how they do it at this point because they've paid their highest guys. They're the happiest. Even Tyreek last week was talking about, yeah, he loves it here. And you want him to love it here. You want him to love it here. But there has to be an edge of unacceptance of what the season's about, an uncomfortable edge from the top down over what we're getting. And I get people are disappointed. Are they uncomfortable? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. And it's like it's almost like the 70-20 win against Denver where everybody's happy and they're doing a little dance in the end zone. That might have been the worst thing that happened to this team.
I don't know. That was a fun day. I mean, the worst
thing
might have been the reaction because to your point, and look, I try not to make a living on Tyreek's quotes, but after the Kansas City loss in the playoffs last year, he was asked about the season, and he's. I wish I could remember the exact quote, but it was the point: we did things no one expected this season, and that gets back to okay, they scored 70 points in September in a home game. Look where Denver's gone since then. Look where the Dolphins have gone. The Dolphins are a straight line. They're,
yep.
They'll put out on their releases and everything. What's it? 4 straight winning seasons now, or if they go 9-8, is it 4? I think it is.
5. It'll be 5.
Might be 5. But that's the point. Who cares? I mean, whether it's 4 or 5. The point is, they're stuck in the zone of mediocrity that Steve Ross in 2018, when he replaced Gaze, when they bought into this Tom Garfinkel's tanking plan, that this is what we're going to do because we want to get out of this mediocrity cycle, and they're stuck in it still.
No, I agree. Where do you stand on whether the Dolphins should make a change? I think we both agreed the game ball, if there was ever any doubt, the game ball was your seal that Mike McDaniel would be back as head coach. Not that I don't think either of us would suggest that he shouldn't.
Right.
What's your take on Chris Greer coming back as GM in terms of what the Dolphins should do, B, in terms of your prediction on what the Dolphins will do?
Oh, I think he's coming back. I again, if Ross wouldn't have been so public with his and effusive in his patch, throwing a fist up when they beat San Francisco, and if he's going to make changes, my historical take is the owner, you don't see him much, and you just certainly don't see him happy like he was. So I think everybody's coming back, and again, can this group fundamentally make some cultural changes about how they run the team, how they run training camp? And you've heard a litany of people who've been in that locker room saying it's a soft team, and can they toughen it up? And not just from the players they bring in, but the manner of how they work, and again, making players a little more uncomfortable. You want a good work environment, but it's got to be a professional work environment of here's the standard, and we're going to work to that standard every time.
Yeah, and I think handing out contracts all over the place to a team that hasn't won a playoff game, I think contributes to this idea of being soft. A couple of quick roster notes heading into this game against Cleveland at 4:05 p.m. It's being shown regionally to maybe a couple of little dots on a map. I mean, nobody's getting that game. And I almost can understand why. Dolphins plays Kendall Fuller on injured reserve with his knee injury. I'd say overall had a pretty solid year as a replacement for Xavier Howard. Did have 3 different injuries that put him on the sidelines, which isn't ideal, but such is life in the NFL. The Dolphins signed Eric Izukama from the practice squad to the 53-man roster, getting a chance. Chances are Dolphins won't have D. Eskridge and Jalen Waddle against the Browns. Tyreek was questionable. Looks like he's going to play. And then the Dolphins elevated DB Nick Needham from the practice squad, probably to provide depth with Jordan Poyer, question mark. And they also elevated Skylar Thompson, ostensibly to serve as a backup to Tyler Huntley. And now we're looking at a matchup of Tyler Huntley versus Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback in the rain on a day where the game time forecast now calls for 60 degrees.
Crazy.
December 29th. Crazy, right?
Right. Can you imagine if it had been in the 20s, it would have been a snow game. And now it's like a bizarre. Do we have Indian summers in late December and off the Lake Erie?
You're from Ohio. You would know that.
Yeah, I've never, I'm sure there have been 60-degree days at the end of the summer. You don't expect it, though. So
it's crazy. What we do expect, what I would think, because of, again, the weather conditions, again, it's going to be raining all day, on and off, windy. I think if you're looking for a shootout with a lot of like aerial fireworks, that ain't your game.
Yeah, it's a shame. I was hoping, obviously, Tua would play, but also I was hoping Cleveland would play Jameis Winston just from the entertainment factor of it all, to give some juice to this game. Instead, I mean, this could be a 17-13 match of 2 dreary teams on a dreary day. I think the Dolphins win. They have everything to play for, though. I mean, Cleveland just wants to get out of town, I'm sure.
I agree. The Dolphins cannot get eliminated on Sunday if they win. Obviously, they can't clinch anything until next week, and then we'll find out when they play. They'll be at the Jets. My best guess, if the Dolphins are still in playoff contention, my best guess would be Sunday 4:25, but that's purely a guess.
I think the NFL would try. I was reading about this, and it makes sense. Would try. So many teams could be affected next Sunday, and have games involved in it. That they'll try to play everybody at the same time, except perhaps Denver, considering if Denver wins, they're in. So,
except the problem is, I'm sorry, Dave, but here's the thing: why they can't play Denver before the other teams, because if Denver wins right off the bat, it eliminates Cincy, eliminates Miami. So to me, Denver cannot be maybe Denver could be the Sunday night game.
Right. I think that was the idea, that they would, they'd play afterwards. Now, could you get everybody at 1:00? I don't know. I don't know the gymnastics that they have to go through for the scheduling, but it would make sense to have all these teams that could get in playing at the same time.
Correct, which will be, and then Denver's because of where they're located, they can't play the 1 p.m. game, so they'll play either at 4:25 on Sunday or they'll play the Sunday night game. That, to me, I say that with a lot of confidence. Had the Arizona Cardinals been able to upset the Rams Saturday night, then you would have had a true winner take all between the Rams and the Seahawks on Sunday, which chances are that had been your Sunday night game. But now I think there are 5 teams involved. If 3 of those 5 teams win, the Rams clinched the NFC West title on strength of victory. How's that? Because even right now, the Rams have a 1-game lead over the Seahawks. If the Seahawks win, they will be tied head-to-head, division record, common opponents, conference record, and then it goes to strength of victory. And then the Rams clinch that, again, if 3 of the 5 teams on their list win.
That's an important one for the Dolphins for our statistical record keeping. Because if the Rams get in, then the Dolphins have a victory against a playoff team.
There you go. They'll be 1-4. Which is kind of basically what they've been in the last several years. And that's not good enough with the whole core. And how does that change with this same core, since we're going on, this would be the 3rd year now with the same group. But they're not playing that kind of team today, so chances are they're going to win because that's what they do. Although, no, what I should say is it would be pretty much a lock if Tua was playing because that's what they do to a quarterback. They spank the bad teams. With Tyler Huntley now, who knows? They still should win.
Yeah, I think
Ravens 3-12, but
yeah, I think again they have everything to play for, and Cleveland has nothing to play for except they're playing at home, and nobody wants to be embarrassed at home. So, but I still picked. I forget what score I picked the Dolphins, but that was with Tua playing. I still think it's a nice win for them.
Yeah, I had 23-9 with Tua playing. Now I'm going to make it 13-10. It's still a win. A win's a win, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's going to wrap it up. Thanks, as always, to my good buddy here, Dave Hyde. Catch his work at the South Florida Sun Sentinel, sunsentinel.com. The X Twitter handle is at Dave Hyde Sports. Please like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. I will be right back here on YouTube after the game for the live post-game show. In the meantime, enjoy the game. Enjoy your Sunday. Thanks, everyone.